Well, first of all, the tragedy in this country is that we keep entering these overseas wars. We triumphantly declare the mission is accomplished the day after, and then we're left with Americans bearing the consequences for decades.
Donald Trump is running the promises made, promises immediately broken administration, and his strike on Iran last night goes to show that he is willing to break any promise, especially the ones that mean most to MAGA. And that promise was that he would bring the United States into no new wars. And for that reason, his strike last night was a failure, not just because of the lies, not just because he broke the law, taking an unconstitutional step in his strike against Iran, but because it was also an operational failure. And for all of those reasons, people are furious, so much so that Donald Trump is getting very loudly booed in a clip that we're going to take a look at. But before we do, I want to start with Congressman Ro Khanna, who is speaking out against how in the dark members of Congress have been kept and why we need to speak out against Donald Trump's illegal attack.
Are you open to the idea that there could be intelligence that is disclosed to you in this classified setting on Tuesday that could justify this? Or is any military action, in your view, war?
Well, I'm always open to new intelligence, but the procedure should have been that Congress was briefed before we decided to enter war and that we actually had a vote on it. You have Tulsi Gabbard, who just months ago, the director of intelligence, saying that was not the case. The reality is, and we should just speak openly, there are people who want regime change in Iran, and they are egging this president on to bomb. I hope cooler heads will prevail. We need to pass Thomas Massie and my war powers resolution to make it clear that we're not going to get further entrenched into the Middle East.
And Congressman Massie, it's interesting because you were talking about a part of the party you represent. The Secretary of State comes from a different part of that same party, as you know. And I did hone in on the question about intelligence and what it showed. He called it an ambition to weaponize. Weaponization ambition. That's different than they're making a nuclear weapon.
Yeah.
But are you open to intelligence and persuasion here?
I'm open as well. But look, in the first Iraq war, the second Iraq war, and the war in Afghanistan, Congress first got the briefings. Congress met and debated. It should have been declarations of war, but at least they did an authorization of use of military force. We haven't had that. This has been turned upside down, this process.
RO is making the essential point there, and it's why I wanted to start with that clip, aside from the fact that he has been speaking out so loudly against any hesitancy within the Democratic Party to oppose Donald Trump's illegal action. Here, the necessary point is that even if there was any information, any intelligence suggesting that it was a necessary strike that Donald Trump's administration illegally made last night, and by the way, there is no intelligence suggesting that, only intelligence to the counter being brought forth by Tulsi Gabbard. But even if it was the case, Donald Trump should have brought that before Congress for their approval. That is how we do things, but that's not how dictator Donald sees it. And that's the reason he was getting so loudly booed, but also calls for his impeachment, as we see from AOC right here. AOC wrote on Twitter last night, the president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. He has impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. It is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment. This is not a Democratic or Republican issue. This is an issue that all Americans should care about. And it is the reason that Donald Trump is facing so much pushback from MAGA after he broke one of his core campaign promises. Because of course he would. Why did you trust this guy? But we saw just how fired up people are over this issue, over this illegal and unconstitutional attack from Donald Trump. Because when Bernie Sanders, live on stage, was told about Donald Trump's strike, the reaction when he shared the news with the crowd shows everything that we need to know about why Democrats need to be hammering Trump on this issue. Let's take a look at the booze rain down on him.
This is a statement from Donald Trump, quote, We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, etc. I agree. And I want to tell you something. Not only is this news that I've just heard, the second alarming that all of you have just heard, but it is so grossly unconstitutional. All of you know that the only entity that can take this country to war is the U.S. Congress. The President does not have the right.
Americans do not want another war. It's why I found it so laughable on the campaign trail that Donald Trump, for some reason, thought he could suggest that he was the pro-peace candidate, someone willing to bring us into war, because his approval rating is slipping, and he wants to get some good press. Well, in fact, the opposite is happening right now with Donald Trump, because not only was this an illegal and unpopular act operationally, it appears that it failed to accomplish its main goal, as we see in breaking reporting right here. The Fordo site is said to look severely damaged but not destroyed, according to U.S. and Israeli officials. So not only was this an incredibly unpopular and illegal action, but operationally it failed. Trump and Pete put him back are trying to throw a parade for themselves. J.D. Vance is out there, saying, I don't even know what this is the beginning, but also the end. But we're going to continue this operation because the strike was successful, but it wasn't. They don't even know. All we know is Donald Trump is willing to break any promise and to do anything in order to boost his approval rating. But the opposite is now happening, which is why it is so important that Democrats coalesce behind this message and talk about how Donald Trump will impose whatever action he wants in his presidency to make himself a dictator, not only because it's what he wants, but he thinks it'll make him more popular. So we need to continue to speak out. And of course, we saw Bernie Sanders continue to do that. And I want to take a listen to more of what he had to say last night.
Let me just say this, that in the midst of all of what is going on, what is enormously important is that we do not give up on a vision of where this country must go. What the establishment wants you to believe is that you have no power, that you can't accomplish anything. They have it all, nothing you could do. And in this moment in American history, what we have got to do in Vermont, in Oklahoma, in Texas, all over this country, is stand up and fight back and tell them this is our country. And I don't care if you are a progressive, a moderate, or a conservative. This country belongs to all of us, not just a handful of billionaires. And when we look out into the future, the kind of America we want, let's understand a few things. Number one, instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, we should demand they start paying their fair share of taxes. No, we should not be throwing 16 million Americans off the health care they have. We should be doing what every other major country does, guarantee health care to all as a human right. This is not a radical idea. It exists in virtually every other wealthy country. The function of a rational healthcare system is not to make hundreds of billions for the drug companies and the insurance companies. It's to provide quality care to all. When we look into the future, we must demand that every worker in America earns a decent wage, raise the minimum wage to at least $17 an hour. We can create millions of good-paying jobs by union jobs, by building 5 million units of low-income and affordable housing. Not a radical idea, not a radical idea to say that in a competitive global economy, every young person in this country, regardless of income, should have the right to get a higher education. We can and must make public colleges and universities, community colleges, trade schools, tuition free. And when we talk about freedom, and many of my colleagues talk about freedom every day, well, what freedom means, among other things, is that every woman in this country has a right to control her own body.
Bernie has taken up the mantle alongside AOC since Trump's presidency began. And speaking to the apolitical folks in our country, the people who don't really consider themselves to be on either side, or maybe people who feel apathetic about politics in the wake of a second Trump term. But that is why it is so important that we hear the responses from the crowds of people who show up to him. The very clear sign that they are showing us about what is important to people who maybe feel like politics isn't the place for them anymore. They want leaders who are going to be honest, who are going to be direct and have their best interest in mind. This is an issue that Democrats should win on. And we need to continue to talk about it. I promise we're going to be doing so. And giving you all the updated reporting, as you can see, we are in a new studio that is coming together right now. It is the reason I've not been able to unfortunately make videos for the last 2 days during a very important news cycle because we didn't have Wi-Fi. The camera setup was experiencing technical difficulties, but we are back. This is so exciting. We are starting new in a new studio. It is only going to improve from here. I appreciate y'all being in the almost year-long journey that it has been for us to come to this place. The reporting will continue. It's going to get better. The sound, the visuals, all of it. I can promise you that. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.